I'm trying out the headset today to see if the sound quality is a little bit better this time than it was last time. So I am on today to talk to you about fear and nerves and anxiety and what I've learned through my own experience as a rider and equestrian and now as a performance coach for riders and for athletes is that we have the power to change our habitual responses to stress and anxiety and really transform those into experiences where we can get into the zone and perform at a really high level. And no matter how deeply entrenched you feel like you are in your nerves or your fear, you can do it. And so I have been having this conversation over and over and over with my friends and my clients. And I feel like it's a really important concept to share. We all have these nooks and crannies in our lives where fear, anxiety, nervousness sort of steal our joy. And especially for us riders, because for most of us, if we ride and we spend the time and the money, the energy that we do on our horses and on our riding, it's really, really important to us. So, however it shows up for you, maybe you feel a little bit stuck. Maybe you feel like you're at a plateau. Maybe you are tired of spooking as much or more than your horse does while you're riding or while you're in lessons or while you're in clinics. Maybe you are paralyzed by your own fear when it comes to competing and you haven't been able to accomplish your goals. Or maybe you've developed some slow-growing fear or anxiety over time and you don't really know where it has come from. It doesn't matter. We can address all of these different types of fear in the same way or a very similar way. So I myself know what it's like to have fear be a constant companion. And I know what it's like to really want to change that and to feel like you can't. In a couple of weeks on one of these, I'm going to share my experience that I had with kind of a dramatic fall a few years ago. And what I learned subsequent to that fall about getting past fear, and I've actually invested a fair amount of time now in researching these concepts and developing a system to really help people work through fear. And it's a system that I now use myself as well. But right now, what I want to talk about is a perspective on fear. And I'm going to share this perspective, and it's sort of a new way, well, maybe not a new way, but a clearer way of understanding fear than I think most of us have. And then I want to talk about a few really concrete strategies that you can use to start to get past it. So I'm going to do this. I got permission from one of my clients to share her story, and it's very recent, so I'm really excited to share this with you. I'm going to change her name to protect her privacy, but she has given me her permission to share this. So we're going to call her Kim. And Kim came to me, I don't know, probably 3 months ago, and she was at her wit's end. She'd been struggling with fear for several years. And she's feeling like it is getting in the way of her progressing in her riding. It was frustrating her in her lessons because she felt like she was frustrating her trainer, and she felt like she wasn't being fair to her horse because she was spooking every time a car would come down the driveway or every time a horse would walk by. And her her nerves would paralyze her to the degree at shows that she simply wasn't able to ride. So she's kind of an exaggerated case. Everybody experiences this on different levels, but her fear was really clearly getting in her way. And Kim has a fabulous horse. She has a fabulous trainer, and she has a good therapist, but she still felt really stuck. So I'm going to share with you the process that she and I went through together. And when she started to describe for me her experiences, I shared with her what I call the fear cycle. And this is the perspective or the way of understanding fear that I think is really, really useful for us. I normally have a cool little diagram, but everything's sort of backwards and upside down on Facebook Live, so I can't show you the diagram. But picture this in your mind. So you have a thought, and that thought triggers an emotion. And emotions are real. they happen in your body. They are chemical responses in your nervous system. And when you have a particular emotion, that particular emotion will cause particular hormones to be released in your body. And so in the case of the fear cycle, stress hormones are released. Cortisol is released, adrenaline is released, and that triggers particular physiological responses. So those physiological responses are, I'm so familiar to all of us, the typical shoulders tense, shallow breathing, sweaty palms, narrow focus, difficulty in concentration, momentary lapses in memory, and lots of negative thinking. So what she was she was noticing, she was experiencing that. And then, of course, for riders, we have a whole nother part of this cycle that happens, because as soon as we have those physiological responses that are triggered by an emotion, our horses feel them in their bodies. And then that creates a particular emotion in them, and then they develop particular ways of thinking about certain situations and about us as riders. So then we have certain thoughts about how our horses are behaving. So it's this, you can see how that is a cyclical fear response. So we're going to call that the fear cycle. And the place where we can most effectively intercept that cycle is in our thoughts. And this is a little bit different from how we tend to think about it, because most people really think that they should be able to control their emotions. We talk a lot about overcoming fear and not showing our anger, or pretending we're not afraid so that the horse doesn't know we're afraid. But the reality is that we can only influence our emotions by taking control of the way we're thinking. So that is what I want to encourage you to really think about when you want to interrupt the fear cycle, is the thoughts that you have and how those you can control your thoughts. You can train your thoughts. And once you do, you can trigger a completely different response in your body. And so now I'm going to describe a different cycle. It's basically the same thing, only now you're having thoughts, positive thoughts, that trigger positive emotions like inspiration, or what I call energetic calm. And these emotions, they actually trigger mood-enhancing hormones to be released in your body, things like serotonin and endorphins. Those actually help you stay very present. And I mean, I can even feel myself, my posture changes, I grow tall, I feel relaxed but sort of confident. And when you can inspire that kind of an emotional response in yourself on purpose, you have the ability then to trigger the whole cycle to be different. So at that point, your horse has a completely different experience. If you're sitting up there calm and concentrated and focused and confident, your horse is going to feel that, and they're also going to be more present, more calm, more focused. So then that goes to their body. They're more relaxed. You can create that rhythm and that relaxation and that looseness that you want. That goes to their mind. They start to develop really positive emotional and mental responses to the riding experiences that they have with you. So that cycle, I call that now the power cycle, that is an intentional cycle, where the fear cycle is habitual. It's the one that we automatically go to because we're human beings. We know we need to survive, and so we're very clued into danger and to that kind of fight or flight instinct that comes up when we're stressed. And so we actually have to be super, super intentional about changing that cycle. So what I want to talk about are our thoughts. And, we think that we can't control our thoughts very well, but we have a lot of power to control our thoughts. We have 60,000 thoughts a day, and 98% of those are the same damn thoughts we had the day before, and 80% of those are negative. And the thing about our thoughts is they are running around mostly on their own. They're doing whatever they want. We're letting them run around unattended all the time, taking us off on tangents, taking us places where we don't need to go. And what I believe is that our thoughts create our reality. The way we think dictates the way we speak, and those two things create our world. So we have the ability to change our own experience by changing the way we think. So when I want to get back to Kim, so we talked about these two different cycles, the fear cycle that she wanted to get out of and the power cycle that she wanted to get into. And the goal of getting yourself into the power cycle is really to learn to intentionally get into the zone. And when you're in the zone, and I know that most of you will recognize this, when you're in the zone, you're focused, you are totally in the moment, you feel calm but still energized, you're physically, mentally, and emotionally exactly where you need to be in the moment to perform your very best. And hallmarks of being in the zone include deep concentration, emotional buoyancy, I love that word, emotional buoyancy, and a heightened sense of mastery, and a lack of self-consciousness. That's a big one, a lack of self-consciousness, so that you get to be really, really present with your horse in the moment. And we tend to think that the zone is a place that only elite athletes get to, or it's this sort of experience that overcomes us randomly at times that we can't control. But what I want to say is that you can learn to get into the zone when you want to. It takes practice. It's like building a muscle. So I'm going to share with you now a couple of strategies that I use with my clients to help them get into the zone. And there's lots of these, but the one we're going to talk about today is the one that I find to be the most fun and that people have the most success with. And so Kim, when she, we talked all about this, and then she came up with a mantra. And a mantra is a word or a phrase or a song that you repeat over and over, that the purpose of it is to help you shift from one emotional state to another. So instead of letting your brain run off unattended, thinking all kinds of thoughts that trigger the fear cycle, you are going to use a mantra to fill your mind with thoughts that trigger the power cycle, that get you to a place of peace and focus and energetic calm. And Kim's mantra was, it's just you and me, superstar. It's just you and me, superstar. That's what she calls her horse. So it gave her a sense of partnership with her horse. It gave her a sense of feeling inspired and confident. And it was amazing how quickly this worked for her. And I've had this experience over and over. If you take the time to discover a mantra that really helps you, you should feel kind of chills or the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you say your mantra. And what I want to say, a mantra is not something, it shouldn't tell you what to do. It's not heels down, eyes up. It shouldn't dictate to you what you're supposed to do, because that just adds resistance. And we all know what you resist persists. So you want to come up with a mantra that actually makes you feel a particular way. So Kim used "It's Just You and Me, Superstar," and she said it to herself in the car. She said it to herself when she was working out. She said it to herself during the day when she was thinking about her rides. And then she began to use it in both her daily rides and in her lessons. And she said that it totally changed her experience in the saddle. She no longer was spooking herself and looking around for distractions, but was able to stay really focused and connected with her horse. And I think most importantly is she got the experience of what it's like to take control of her thoughts and really be intentional about what she was allowing into her mind. And there was no room left for her what ifs. And there's two different kinds of thoughts that tend to haunt us. One of them is the what ifs, And in Kim's case, it was, what if my horse spooks? What if she bolts again? What if a big truck comes down the driveway? What if she doesn't like that horse over there in the corner? All these sort of red light fears that come up for us. Those are the what if thoughts. And mantras are really, really powerful in leaving no room for those. So think about your favorite songs. If you don't have a mantra, your favorite songs, poems, words that you like that sort of describe the experience you want to have while you're riding. If there are things that friends or trainers have said to you in the past that have stuck with you, that have been really powerful and helpful for you, those all could be mantras for you. And sometimes it takes a few days to kind of let things clank around in your mind before you land it. But you'll know when you land your mantra because it'll feel good. You'll immediately feel an emotional response to it. Some examples of other mantras, I made a list here because I thought it might be cool for you to hear some of them. Let's see, let it be. I have one client who sings Eye of the Tiger to herself while she's going around the outside of the arena before she goes down the center line. One of my favorite ones is Like a Duck, like just water off a duck's back. Watch Me. That was someone who really wanted to have a sense of pride and confidence while she was riding. And she even got her mantra put on a bracelet, Watch Me. Dance with Me. I have a jumper rider and her mantra is stride by stride, stride by stride, stride by stride. So whatever you need, you might need to be calmed down or you might need to be pumped up. You might have mantras for different situations and different times. You might find that if you have a mantra for a while, it loses a little bit of its power and you need a new one. So have fun with this and be really flexible with it. But I highly encourage you, if you haven't done this before, to figure out what your mantra is for this time in your life and begin to take control of those what if thoughts. So Kim was very successful with her mantra. She was super excited. And, 3 or 4 weeks went by and then she hit a bump in the road. And the bump in the road was that a show came along and it was a schooling show and she'd set a really powerful goal for the schooling show. She was really excited. She was going with friends and she was just really wanting to test out the mantra because she'd had so much success with it in her daily riding and her lessons that she wanted to try it out at the show. Well, I got a call from her the day before the show and she was miserable because all of her, makes me feel emotional just thinking about it, all her fear just came back and the mantra was useless. And it was so cool because that for one thing that she was able to talk about it because for a long time, this was when she would kind of close down and not talk about the fear. So she went into this show thinking that she'd solved her problem, that this mantra was because it had worked so well during the weeks before, that it was going to save her at the show. And what she found out is that was not the case. And what happened is that her thoughts, her judgment of herself kicked in. And this is the second kind of thought that we have that is really powerful in keeping us in the fear cycle. There are judgments, self-judgment, usually. And this is where the concept of reality versus story comes in. And so Kim's judgment, as soon as she started to feel a little anxious and nervous, she started to judge herself for that. And she started to get very afraid that she wasn't going to be able to do this and that the fear was going to come back. And sure enough, it did. And every time she feels nervous, she feels like a failure and judges herself for being a failure. And what she realized when we had this conversation was that almost every thought she had was a judgment about herself. And I think we all experience that. We judge ourselves for, I like to really realize that what we think other people think about us, the negative things we think other people think about us, are really our deepest fears about ourselves. They have nothing to do with what other people really think. And so, if you think about when you're riding around in the warm-up arena, what are those thoughts that are going through your head? If you're thinking about what other people are thinking, if you're thinking about what your family is thinking or what your horse is thinking, and those are often very highly judgmental thoughts, that will keep you stuck in the fear cycle. So what Kim learned, and she actually went through that show, and she was miserable. She said to me afterwards she never wanted to do another show again. She wanted to give up. She felt so discouraged. She did not end up riding her horse even in the warm-up. Her horse was extremely nervous because she was so nervous, and it was in her mind, a big failure. So what I had her do after that is really identify what was real and what were her what were her fears, what were her stories that she was telling herself. And the prevalent story for her, and it's a little different for all of us, but her prevalent story was that everything was a failure, that everything represented a failure. If her horse was nervous coming out of the stall, oh my God, I'm going to be a failure. I'm nervous. I'm a failure. So there had been so many stories in her head about her being a failure that this was like a big roadblock. So when you look at so many of us, we have stories that we tell ourselves, whether they're about disappointment or failure or what other people think about us, that we just believe to be true. And when you're able to pull that apart and really realize the difference between what is true and what is a story, then you can start to react and respond according to what is true, what is truly happening, rather than to what the story is in your head. And because as human beings, emotions are so powerful for us, we tend to be responding to our emotions more often and what the thoughts that those come with those, then we respond to reality. I had a client last night say she was super disappointed about some conversations that she'd had, and was feeling like they didn't go the way she had thought, so she didn't know what she was going to do next. And I said to her, okay, what would your plan be now if you tell me with your logical mind only? If you didn't have the disappointment you have now, and you were just thinking with your logical mind, what would your plan be? And she thought for a second, and she just rattled off this really simple plan, a really simple response to her situation. And she was like, whoa, because the disappointment had gotten in her way and not allowed her to think logically and clearly about her situation. And this is the same thing that was happening with Kim, is her feelings of frustration and failure were getting in her way of just responding to her environment and making decisions to move forward throughout her day. So once we talked about this, and she made a really, really strong commitment to changing those thoughts, those judgment thoughts, and asking herself, okay, what's really true right now? What is the truth of this moment right now, and how do I want to respond? What's the truth, and how do I want to respond? What's the truth, and how do I want to respond? Starting from when she started to get really nervous the day before. So she just had a show again last Sunday. Yes, her trainer and I talked her into doing it, and even though she said she was never going to do another show. And I want to read to you the email that she sent me the day after the show. The show was fabulous. No panic. A little nervous, but I found my way through it, and I'm recognizing so much. As soon as I recognize things, I can fix them. I was able to channel my inner Stephen Peters and ask for more from my horse, and she gave it to me. People came up to me and said that it was the first time they'd ever seen me smile at a show. Best I've felt in a long time. Freedom. Nothing, I mean nothing, is a failure. And the thing is, when nothing is a failure, you're free. You're free. There's no way that you can eliminate fear. There is no way around it, but you can get to the other side of it. So I just, and part of it is really having an open mind and an open heart. It was really hard for Kim. It was a tough love conversation we had when I really let her know that I thought her judgment of herself was the thing that was stopping her. And that there was really no way for her to get past this fear unless she was willing to stop judging herself, because a lot of us are really attached to, for whatever reason, to those judgments that we have. And she was super courageous about diving in and being willing to let go of those. And, you know, this happened fast for her. Sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes, you know, you have to give yourself the opportunity to not only change from the fear cycle into being able to get into the power cycle, but also retrain your nervous system to a degree. And we're going to talk more about that in 2 weeks when I talk about recovering from a fall and getting back in the saddle and kind of moving past fear after you've had a traumatic experience. Because a lot of the time, even once we know everything's fine and we know we're not in any real physical danger anymore, our nervous system hasn't learned that yet. So part of this process that I'm teaching you today, and what we're going to talk about in a couple weeks, is really a process of retraining your nervous system. And I like to say our nervous systems are like horses, and we need to have the same compassion and the same patience with our nervous systems that we do with our horses. So there are a lot more pieces to this, and there are more strategies. I'm not going to go through all of them today, but I do want to let you know that I am really excited about the Performance Project, which is my 1 month, 4-week group coaching program coming up in May. It's going to start May 1st and go through the month of May. And I'm going to be sharing all of these strategies. And really, it's about high performance. It's not just about overcoming fear, but it's really about high performance in your life, in your riding, however it shows up for you. We're going to be talking about ways to get through it, get past it, whether you're someone who's going to the Olympics or you're someone who is nervous right now standing on the mounting block. And it's the same. It's the same for all of us. We just have different situations, different scenarios to deal with. So I've tried to design a program that really encompasses all of the different ways that we can improve our performance and get over fear. It's going to consist of group coaching calls, which are super fun. I think some of you that are here, I can see, have been in some of my programs before. And it'll be recordings and some video and a beautiful workbook. And the fun thing about this, so my intention with this program is to reach as many people as possible and create a community. So it's going to be really inexpensive. It's going to be only $79 for the first 30 people that sign up. So if you want to be one of those first 30 people, the registration is going to open next Friday on March 30th. And I'm going to post the link in the comments under this, but it's on my website, and it's jenverharen.com/performance-project / and I'll post that link. But if you want to go and get on the early notification list, you can do that, because I would love to have as many people in that program as I can, because I just find this conversation to be so important, and to almost everyone, almost every rider I know, this is a central conversation that we need to have, and it requires coaching, training, and a community to get through it and get to the other side of and perform your very best. So that's the intention of the program. So I want to review what we just talked about today. So fear cycle, habitual response to stress. The power cycle is the intentional response to stress. And you have the power to train your brain and get yourself into the power cycle, to experience being in the zone when you want to be in the zone. And there are two kinds of thoughts that tend to keep us powerfully in the fear cycle. One of them is our what ifs, and one of them is our judgment thoughts. And having a mantra is the way I'd love for you to experiment with, kind of making no room for your what ifs. And the idea of story versus reality, and really pulling apart what stories you tell yourself and getting clear about what's true, and really committing yourself to operating in the truth and not letting yourself operate in the stories that you tell. So thank you so much. Again, if you want to be a part of the Performance Project, just check it out on my website. And I will be here next week, next Friday. This is so cool. I just feel like this is such a great, easy venue to be doing this. So next Friday, I'll be talking about motivation. So I'll see you here for that. All right, thanks.